All right. Getting started a little bit late today, but that's all right. I'm going to read through this Supreme Court case. So, or the Supreme Court leak. Take a second. Actually, let me go into. God, I want to get rid of that stupid. Take one more second. All right, let's get some of this started. So, let's get the article open. Sorry about that. Why am I able to find this? This is from today. Okay. So we'll start. Actually, one more second. Let me just make sure my streams are all working. Yep, that one's working. Working. I lost one of my bot followers on Twitch. That's pretty good. Yeah, on YouTube we're all good. Okay. I need one more second and then I'm good to go. Actually, I should move my clothing in a frame because that's intrusive to say the least. Oh, hello, it's me, Goliath. What's up, man? One more second. Ah, okay, so I'll hit record as well. So the Supreme Court shadow docket finally got sort of unmasked in this New York Times article. Prior to 2015, this term didn't exist, but I think there's historical uses going back to like the 50s. The shadow docket is basically just like the way for the Supreme Court to make decisions where they don't provide written down opinions. So there's still a decision. The votes are still counted, and there's something provided one way or another, but they don't explain the opinion. And it's been controversial because it's like a way to manage caseloads, but it's also sort of iffy in terms of like the procedural element. So finally, the New York Times was able to get some memos published that were leaked from the Supreme Court clerks that actually explains why the Roberts Court has become so focused on utilizing them. And this will be a first time going through the article for me as well. So here we go. Just after 6 p.m. on February evening in 2016, the Supreme Court issued a cryptic one-paragraph ruling that sent both climate policy and the court itself spinning in new directions. For 2 centuries, the court had generally handled major cases at a stately pace that encouraged care and deliberation, relying on written briefs, oral arguments, and in-person discussions. The justices composed detailed opinions that explained their thinking to the public and rendered judgment only after the courts had weighed in. Excuse me. But this time, the justices were sprinting to block a major presidential initiative. By a 5-4 vote along partisan lines, the order halted President Barack Obama's Clean Power Bill, or plan. His signature, environmental policy. They acted before any other court had addressed the plan's lawfulness. The decision consisted only of legal boilerplate without a word of reasoning. So it's interesting that they mentioned this case as well because see how it's a 5-4 decision that was along partisan lines? You'd think that if it's such a close vote that was based on partisan lines, that the losing party would want to explain, what they thought was wrong about the decision, but they didn't. And when I say it's like a curious runoff, like there's a way that you can see that or establish that, but like it's not a one-off. Like there was precedent for this going back to Nixon. So whatever. At the time, the ruling seemed like a curious one-off, but that single paragraph turned out to be a sharp and lasting break. That night marks the birth, many legal experts believe, of the court's modern shadow docket. So yeah, it's more like it was a one-off, on a historical basis. Like that happens, it's not unprecedented, but to become this trend was interesting. And they've now used it to make many major decisions, including granting President Trump more than 20 key victories on issues from immigration to agency power. Since that night a decade ago, the logic behind the Supreme Court's pivotal 2016 order has remained a mystery. Why did a majority of the justices bypass time-tested procedures and opt for a new way of doing business? The answer would remain secret for generations, legal experts predicted. We'll never know, at least until our grandkids can read the justices' internal papers from that time period. Stephen Vladeck, a law professor at Georgetown, wrote in a newsletter in February, marking the anniversary of the order. The New York Times has obtained those papers and is now publishing them, which is, again, like, that's just crazy, like, in context. If you read about any of this stuff, like the idea that this could be something that they actually are able to, figure out is wild. Also, before I forget, sorry, let me go to the other scene for 1 second. I forgot to open StreamerBots, which is not good. Whoops. Would be a light detour. I was wondering, I was like, hey, why is this stuff not working? And that's probably why. Okay, there you go. Hopefully chat overlay is working now. Okay. My bad. The 16 pages of memos exchanged in a 5-day dash provide an extraordinarily rare window into the court, showing how the justices talk to one another outside of public view. Writing on formal letterhead, but addressing one another by their first names and signing off with their initials, they sound notes of irritation, air grievances, and plead for more time. In addition to using legal materials, they cite a blog post and twice a television interview. They sometimes engage in one another's arguments, but they often simply talk past each other. I think this part, like that last part, has been kind of evident in a lot of the major decisions recently as well. Like when you think about the recent just tariff decision, there was almost no like concurrence in the sense in the not literal sense, in the sense that like you read all the opinions, and even when two justices were voting together, they had completely different reasons, oftentimes not addressing one another. And Gorsuch just like openly expressed like extreme amounts of frustration and anger at the court's like disposition towards the ruling in general in his own ruling. So I think that I think this part is hard to ignore. Like I think everyone kind of sees that this is like a real issue in the court. In public, Chief Justice Robert Jr. has cultivated a reputation for care and caution. The paper reveals a different side of him. At a critical moment for the country and the court, the papers show he acted as a bulldozer in pushing to stop Mr. Obama's plan to address global climate crisis. See, that's not that surprising, though, because when people say that Roberts has cultivated a reputation for care and caution, it's only for things that he cares about. Like realistically, if it has to do with native rights, and then he's all over that. But that is not that's not the whole picture for someone like him at all. When colleagues warned the Chief Justice that he was proposing an unprecedented move, he was dismissive. I recognize that the posture of this stay request is not typical, he wrote, but he argued that the Obama plan, which aimed to regulate coal-fired plants, was the most expensive regulation ever imposed in the power sector, and too big, costly, and consequential for the court not to act immediately. In the Trump era, he and other conservative justices have repeatedly empowered the president through their shadow docket rulings. By contrast, the papers reveal a court wielding those same powers to block Mr. Obama. Justice Samuel Alito Jr. warned that in the court failed to stop the president, its own institutional legitimacy would be threatened. So, I will say, like, this has been followed up, like, consistently. Like, you see Biden and Trump facing a lot of the same pressures that you're seeing Alito describe there, in that, like, they are checking Trump a lot because, like it or not, the court is very much interested in their own power, unlike Congress. Excuse me. The court liberals pushed back, but compared with their recent slashing dissents, they were not especially forceful, mostly confining their arguments to procedures and timing. The papers expose what critics have called the weakness at the heart of the shadow docket, an absence of the kind of rigorous debate the justices devote to their normal cases. After obtaining the papers, the Times confirmed their authenticity. With several people familiar with the deliberations, shared them with a spokeswoman for the court. The Times posted detailed questions to the justices who wrote the memos. They did not respond. Since that breakneck February 2016 exchange, the emergency docket has swelled into a major part of the court's business, as the justices have short-circuited the deliberations of lower courts. The decisions are technically temporary, but are often hugely consequential. Rulings with no explanation or reasoning, like the sparse paragraphs from that February night, have become routine. The emergency docket is now a central legacy of the court led by Chief Justice Roberts. Read a decade later, the memo suggests that none of the justices fully appreciated what they were doing, embarking on a questionable new way of operating. And here's a constitutional collision. The 2016 case was a collision between the principles and personalities of Mr. Obama and Chief Justice Roberts. The president was under enormous pressure to address the global climate crisis. He had campaigned on that promise, then for 8 years the planet heated. He failed to get major environmental legislation through Congress. With his term about to end, this was his last chance to act. The Chief Justice was eager to assert his institution's authority to rein in Mr. Obama's Environmental Protection Agency, which he believed had sidestepped a recent ruling. But two men, both cerebral, polished Harvard law graduates, had long posed a puzzle. How could such smooth personalities create so much friction? Mr. Obama had been one of just 22 senators to vote against Chief Justice Roberts' confirmation in 2005, saying that the nominee had far more often used his formidable skills on behalf of the strong in opposition of the weak. That's not a great reason to block that, whatever. 4 years later, the two men managed to botch the simple task of reciting the presidential oath at Mr. Obama's first inauguration. True, Chief Justice Roberts had cast a decisive vote in 2012 to save the centerpiece of the Affordable Care Act, Mr. Obama's signature legislative achievement, but that was approved by Congress. I will say, I really don't love the framing that a lot of these places use for the court, where, like, the reality is, like, no matter how much you dislike the court, it's just, like, the originals just aren't that partisan, like, compared to any alternative. Like, they just really aren't. You know, you can imply they are, but they're just not. Like, and I think everyone with half a brain knows that, but, you know, whatever, I guess. Anyway, after Republicans won control of Congress, Mr. Obama responded by pushing the boundaries of presidential authority, promising that his administration would act on pressing problems, with or without Congress. He tightened gun regulations and granted deportation relief to millions of undocumented immigrants. But Chief Justice, and this is part of the issue of, like, there's this, like, you know, in general, like, trend of, like, this executive, not overreach, but executive growth, where, like, the executive just keeps gaining more and more power, and it's going largely unchecked. Now, granted, I don't even know what, like, mechanism there is to really deal with that, but that's just sort of what's been happening. The Chief Justice and some of his colleagues were watching warily, concerned the president was going past what the Constitution allowed him to do on his own. In a 2014 opinion written by Justice Antonin Scalia, the court warned Mr. Obama that he needed to tread carefully in setting environmental policy without congressional approval. The statement was one of the early articulations of what would come to be known as the major questions doctrine, saying that on important matters, executive branch agencies could act only with clear direction from Congress. This is kind of the heart of everything, too, because I think there's still, like, a really intense debate on whether the major questions doctrine is even constitutional. I've seen some people say one way and others say otherwise. I don't know enough to really comment, honestly, but it's suspect because, again, like, the problem is if the Congress is becoming increasingly ineffectual and there's increasingly important positions that are no longer being even deliberated upon one way or another in Congress, like environmental protections, like, at what point, like, what is the mechanism to even correct that? How do you, without executive authority increasing, how do you address these problems, or do you just let them lay dormant? In June 2015, the court ruled against the Obama administration in a case involving mercury emissions. The next day, an EPA official, Janet McCabe, made what now looks like a tactical arrow. She issued a statement that, according to the papers, offended the Chief Justice and struck him as an attempt to sideline the court. Yeah, you can't do this. Look, you can say what you want about the justices themselves, but if you try to sideline their authority, those janitors are going to come after you. She asserted that the court's ruling had come too late to matter. The majority of power plants are already in compliance or well on their way to compliance. In a recent interview, Mrs. McCabe said she had not meant to, quote, be disrespectful of the Supreme Court or the judicial system, and was merely stating a legal reality. Indeed, over more than 3 years of litigation, no court had stated the mercury regulation, and power plants had already taken major steps to conform. With the clock ticking down in Mr. Obama's presidency and the global Paris Climate Accord looming, the White House tried to craft a signature piece of environmental legislation that could survive the court's scrutiny. In October 2015, the EPA issued Mr. Obama's Clean Power Plan, which aimed to shift the power sector from reliance on coal to natural gas, wind, and solar. The goal was an aggressive transformation in the domestic energy industry, according to White House fact sheet. Its legal basis was open to question. The agency said it was authorized by a seldom-used provision of an old law, the Clean Air Act of 1970. Critics responded that it was unlikely that Congress would authorize a sweeping overhaul of the nation's power supply in such an obscure provision. This is the issue of some of these partisan interpretations, because it doesn't matter if the provision is obscure or if it's old. Like, the reality is, if it's allowed in the provision, if there is power granted in that provision, it's Congress's job to take it away if they see it's fit to remove. This idea that because it exists, you can just just pretend it doesn't. Like, that's just ridiculous. It's a part. Now, everyone is guilty of this partisan a tactic, but it just goes to the fact again, like, there has to be some respect for the proceduralism of how the government even works at some point. When more than 24 states, along with business groups, quickly sued the government to stop the program, or sorry, along with businesses quickly sued to stop the program, Obama administration lawyers readied to an extended fight. They said in recent interviews the case was surely going to wind its way to the Supreme Court eventually, and given the tension between the conservative justices and the Obama administration, they knew it might not survive. The challenge so the regulation went straight to the D.C. Circuit, which set it down for a prompt argument, but refused to halt the plan in the meantime. At that point, the challengers, led by West Virginia, tried to take a shortcut. Instead of waiting for the appeals court to hear the case, they went straight to the Supreme Court, asking the justices to pause the plan for the duration of the litigation, including an eventual possible return to the Supreme Court. Both sides agreed that it was an unusual request. This had never been done, Elbert Lynn, who was West Virginia's Solicitor General, acknowledged in an interview. At the Justice Department, lawyers involved with the case said they were not terribly worried. To be sure, the court sometimes granted emergency applications from death row inmates and in fast-moving election disputes, but the court had never intervened on an emergency basis to shut down a major presidential initiative. In football parlance, said Avi S. Garbo, the EPA's general counsel at the time, we would call it a Hail Mary. So again, like, this does show there was like a, even if the shadow docket conceptually, like, you had these types of cases in the past, you know, you didn't have this sort of, I guess, development. A 5 day, or sorry, you didn't have this sort of, the application would not be like this. A 5 day sprint. West Virginia's emergency request landed with, so how long is this article? That's not much longer. West Virginia's emergency request landed with Chief Justice Roberts on January 26, 2016, just as the Supreme Court was scattering into vacation mode for its annual midwinter break. Justice Clarence Thomas retreated to Florida to teach a law school class. Justice Stephen G. Breyer delivered a lecture in Paris. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg gave a talk in Italy, billed as a conversation with the notorious RBG. Ugh. Justice Anton Scalia sped through Asia, where he promoted a book, met with the Prime Minister of Singapore, and schmoozed with a local lawyer over drinks at a rooftop bar. In the meantime, Chief Justice Roberts worked speedily, ordering the Obama administration to respond in just 8 days. To better understand what happened next, the Times spoke to 10 people, liberals and conservatives, who were familiar with the deliberation over the pivotal emergency order and who spoke on the condition of anonymity because confidentiality was a condition of their employment. At the court, word was passing among the clerks who serve as brokers among the 9 chambers. Some of the conservative justices were taking the long shot application seriously. It was initially hard to tell how the vote would fall, people familiar with the discussion said. The Supreme Court felt less predictable back then, more alive with debate. The court was technically divided 5-4 between justices appointed by Republicans and Democrats, but Justice Kennedy, appointed by President Ronald Reagan, was a true swing vote. A persuadable person, as one of those people put it. The term before, he had written a majority opinion to establish a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. This is a real artifact of just the way the country functioned during the Reagan years, and that, like, the idea that you could have a Republican Supreme Court pick who is, like, on ideological grounds this much of a swing vote is just very interesting, where it was kind of what they tried to replicate with the Merrick Garland pick, and to kind of throw the conservatives a bone, and obviously did not work because McConnell blocked it for a year. But prior to that, it's kind of interesting how bipartisanship really did have a motivating factor somewhat. On February 5th, the internal correspondence obtained by the Times shows the Chief Justice circulated a blast of a memo insisting that the court halt the president's plan. His arguments were forceful, quick, and filled with confident predictions. The court was going to give the case a full hearing eventually, he forecasted. At that point, the justices would vote to overturn the Obama plan. He said because it went beyond the boundaries of the Clean Air Act. For now, the Chief Justice contended that the court had to act immediately because the energy industry, quote, must make changes to business plans today. Absent a stay, the Clean Power Plan will cause and is causing substantial and irreversible reordering of the domestic power sector before the court had an opportunity to review its legality, he wrote. In its final paragraph, the Chief Justice again told colleagues that the EPA had done an end run around the court with the mercury regulation just months before, and said the agency had signaled that it was planning to do the same again. But Chief Justice cited an unusual source of that last point, one that would not ordinarily figure in a Supreme Court opinion. An interview with the BBC in which the EPA administrator at the time, Gina McCarthy, had said, "We are baking the Clean Power Plan into the system." I think what's interesting too about this specific case or this specific example is that, like, if you could ever imagine a sector of the executive that, was the most impactful to the total country in history, and future, it is energy, right? Energy is the core of every kind of decision that's made throughout pretty much any political process. So, like, to be this extreme about energy, like, yeah, it makes sense. Is it ideal to do things this way? Like, not necessarily, but at the very least, it's kind of not excusable. It's at least understandable to have this disposition, I guess. The comments of the EPA administrator herself indicate that without immediate action from this court, this rule will become functionally irreversible. What's interesting about that too is that, like, it kind of is, if there's truth to this, if there's like a real legal argument for this, like, it is necessary for the court to act, because if you cannot provide remediation for an action like that, then it doesn't really, and this is the problem we're having with Trump admin now, which is that, like, if you can't provide remediation, it doesn't matter if the opinion or not is substantial. Like, it doesn't matter, because maybe you could block it happening in another application in the future, maybe, but the problem is the action is already done. There's no way to correct it. So, you can pat yourself on the back, but you've politically done, or you've done nothing governmentally, I guess. In the memo, he weighed no potential downsides of his proposal and considered no alternatives. Justice Breyer responded later that day to the chief's memo, but did not address all of its points. Such stays were unusual, he wrote, stating his objections mildly. He skipped over the question of whether the plan was lawful, asking only why the rush. Again, part of the court, I imagine a lot of those broader concerns that the public would have are probably not taken as the first things internally to point out. They're probably thinking more about their own, internal norms that are largely, supposed to be private from the public, or kept private from the public. Excuse me. Justice. So he skipped over the question. The Circuit Court had already set a date to hear the case in June. The first deadline for power plants to reduce their emissions was 6 years away. Full compliance was not required until 2030. That was plenty of time for the case to play out through the legal system. The chief wrote back right the next day, sounding irritated and blunt. Speed was vital, he said, because environmental regulations was going to be very expensive for states and power industry. The sums involved could approach $480 billion. It's quite a lot, he asserted, and his industry groups would have to start preparations immediately, which is true. Like, even if legally you were able to get, some sort of adjustment or blocking, that's probably not enough. You probably do have. Why did this just zoom in so much? What the hell? Did my camera just zoom in all the way? What? What just happened? Why did it just zoom in so much? Do I have auto zoom on? Hold on. Like, that zoomed in, right? 100%. Yeah. Why'd that happen? That was weird. Okay. All right. That was weird. I will back to the article. Without a stay of the EPA's rules, well, actually, I should also. Without a stay of the EPA's rules, both the states and private industry will suffer irreparable harm from a rule that is, in my view, highly unlikely to survive, he wrote. He was predicting the ultimate outcome of a case that had barely begun to be litigated. Seeing how little headway Justice Breyer had made, Justice Alina Kagan sounded an alarm. In a memo on February 7th, she warned the Chief Justice that he was departing from the court's long-established way of doing business. You never want to be against Kagan. The unique nature of relief sought in these applications gives me real pause. Court action at this point in the process would be unprecedented, she added. She mentioned that she was inclined to find that the Obama plan was lawful, but she said that briefing made it difficult for her to determine with any confidence which side is ultimately likely to prevail. Justice Alito issued a salvo on the same day as Justice Kagan, with neither of them addressing each other. Echoing the Chief Justice's sense of insult and suspicion of the Obama administration, he wrote that the EPA appeared to be trying to render the court irrelevant. A failure to stay this rule threatens to render our ability to provide meaningful judicial review, and by extension, our institutional legitimacy, a nullity. The Chief Justice and Justice Scalia, Thomas and Alito wanted to halt the Obama plan, according to people familiar with the deliberations. Breyer, Ginsburg, Sotomayor, and Kagan were opposed. It is not clear whether Justice Scalia, Thomas, or Ginsburg set out their reasonings in writing. As usual, the decision would come down to Justice Kennedy. On February 9th, he dashed off a quick 3-sentence note. He believed the Supreme Court would ultimately stay the Clean Power Plan soon anyway, and that there was no reason to put off the inevitable. He was voting with the Chief Justice. So this is I will say, it's a little interesting how pragmatic these originalists are right here. Like, is there an original justification for the shadow docket? Over just 5 days, the justice had decided the issue. Even as he debated the Obama plan's possible burden on the power industry, in the entire chain of correspondence obtained by the Times, not a single justice, conservative or liberal, mentioned the dangers of a warming planet as one of the possible harms the court should consider. At 6:20 p.m. on Tuesday, February 9th, the court alerted the public to its decision, releasing the cryptic one-paragraph order. To the public, the White House tried to downplay the speed and starkness of its loss, calling it merely a bump in the road, a call with reporters. But behind closed doors, officials were astonished that the court had intervened so quickly. They said later, Mr. Garbo, the EPA's general counsel, was meeting with Mrs. McCarthy about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, when the order landed and aide interrupted, handing him a note he said he read with, quote, utter shock and surprise. These days, justices who agree with emergency orders often protest in vigorous written dissent. In 2016, the 4 liberal justices merely noted that they had voted against the order. Although their private memos included extended arguments about the majority's approach, they said nothing more in public. In the moment, the case looked like an outlier, not a turn toward a new way of operating. According to people involved, nor did it look like a final decision on climate policy. Hillary Clinton was the strong favorite to win the presidency later that year. With her election, the court would be poised to take a step to the left. Then, just 4 days after the court's decision, many of the certainties, projections, and assumptions that the justices had made in those rushed memos started to collapse. The new normal. The following Saturday morning, Justice Scalia failed to appear for breakfast at a weekend hunting retreat in Texas. Hours later, he was found dead. As far as the public record reveals, the vote on the Clean Power Plan was his last. Had the court not acted with exceptional speed, the case would have ended in deadlock and the Obama plan would have stayed in place. But not for long. With Mr. Trump's election in November, the plan was doomed as a practical matter. In the end, the legacy of those 5 days was more about the transformation of the court than it was about the fate of the Obama effort to confront climate change. The litigation continued, but became a ghost ship of a case after Mr. Trump replaced it with his own regulation. In 2022, the time following the normal procedures, the Supreme Court concluded that the Clean Air Act did not authorize the EPA to issue sweeping regulations across the power sector to address climate change. Since then, even as the court's approval ratings dropped, applications like the one it confronted a decade ago have proliferated, swamping the court's ordinary work. This is partly a consequence of gridlocked Congress and presidents willing to push the boundaries of executive power, particularly with Mr. Trump, but it is also the result of a justice's decision to entertain emergency requests like the one in 2016, warping procedures that have developed over centuries. In an appearance this month at the University of Alabama, Justice Sonia Sotomayor reflected on the unceasing flood of emergency applications. We've done it to ourselves, she said. Yeah, that was an interesting article. It was a little it was a little less interesting than I thought it would be. But I don't know. That's kind of whatever. Like, I think the real question is with all this stuff, like, is the proceduralist break, like, is this new system something that is distinct? Is it something that is unusual? Or is it just sort of the way that things necessarily are going to go? Like, if the president is doing something that is illegal, like, the court shouldn't be where it goes. It shouldn't be like the immediate stopgap. It should be Congress. Like, it should be, you know, mediation like that. And there's a reason why the court wasn't doing these shadow docket cases in the past. Like, there wasn't that breakdown over over procedural power. You know, there was more respect for the law, you know, so to speak. There was more of an effort to actually have those procedural gaps in place. So I kind of already, it's stuff that, whoops, I didn't mean to close that. It's stuff that, like, it's not surprising, I guess, is more what I'm trying to say. It's not surprising, although it is understandably frustrating to deal with. I do love this. This is so funny.
Plays down check this out. You gotta check.
So this guy, the quartering, is kind of like a old school. Oh wait, I didn't have that in the right scene. My bad. Whoops. Here, so you can see.
Plays down check this out. You gotta check this out.
Well, here we go.
You should. And this looks
like.
Let me know what you think in the comments.
What do you think?
Check this out.
It's awesome. He's a this old school lolcow guy, the quartering, who's been in so many stupid debates recently. He's a, you know, right wing but like MAGA styled grifter. Like, he's a podcast with Tony Mac. People were surprised at how well his channel was doing. Like, the numbers on his social blade are really impressive. And just because he's doing these videos, like, he's just like very blatantly stealing content. He'll just take someone else's like short form content and then just do like the wow, what's going on here? And it's very funny. Again, like, there's no reason, you know, it's working, it's working. Oh, or this. Maybe I missed something, but when Hannity keeps saying he no longer considers himself a Catholic, wasn't that like a decade ago? Like, what? I don't think that was a recent thing. I'm pretty sure, at least. I don't remember him being a I don't remember him going back to Catholicism after he dropped out of it. Scrolling through. Oh, and also as a reminder for everyone watching, if you want to, I can just quickly post it up. If you want to join to debate or discuss anything, there's an open invite Discord. Can put it. Let me just go. Here it is in the chats, just for anyone who's watching. Just in case you want to join. This is for any sort of live debates that are, of interest to people. So yeah. Let's go back to this scene. I like this. Is an interesting tweet. Trader Joe's reputation is totally misunderstood. Despite the crunchy sounding name, Trader Joe's sells cheap, easy food, lots of snacks and frozen stuff at low prices. It's basically a college freshman's ideal. It's not like a fair trade, ethical, organic specialty grocer. Totally baffles me when people talk about Trader Joe's in the same breath as like Waldorf schools or all cotton clothing. Trader Joe's is when you go to get a $3 bottle of wine that is, in the States, it's other wine. It's good value wine. $4 bags of potato chips, oftentimes less, and $5 bag, like their signature chips, I think, are $3. Like they're like classic style potato chips. $5 bags of frozen dumplings. Again, it's cheaper than that. I'm pretty sure like their wontons and dumplings are both $3. I think at least they are. In several urban areas, I've been all chock full of mysterious toxins. Don't get me wrong, I like Trader Joe's. I like how they have a revolving stock of random new snack foods I've never tried before. Their jalapeno limeade was one of the best cocktail mixtures I've ever tasted. I like their bargain price rolled cheese shelf, but it is not fancy. Yeah, it's interesting. I've maybe it's just where I grew up, but like it is so interesting. I'll see sometimes people online or people that aren't from certain areas. They'll talk about Trader Joe's, like it's Whole Foods, and even Whole Foods is after the Amazon acquisition gotten so much cheaper. But like you go to Trader Joe's for cheap stuff. Like their rice is really cheap for the size it's in. Like they are not some like specialty grocer. Like it is super super cheap stuff. Usually undercutting pretty much every brand. Like even Aldi and Lidl sometimes will have certain products that are more expensive. I think the one place where they kind of average out with a little bit more value or less value, excuse me, is their food, like their why am I blanking on this? Their frozen or their fresh cold section, so like things like meat, is sometimes a little more expensive. But aside from that, it's a very good deal. This is some good slop.
Just to back up a bit, I've
kind of interested.
been working on AI for 10 years, and probably the thing I've noticed most about it is how fast it's making progress. 2 years ago, it was at the level of a smart high school student. Now it's probably at the level of a smart college student and reaching beyond that. And on one hand, I think there's a number of very positive things that are going to happen. I used to be a biologist. I think AI has exactly the kind of skills that are needed to cure important diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, to provide cheaper energy, many positive things. But exactly those same kind of skills, things like summarizing a document, brainstorming, putting together a financial report, makes me worry a lot that entry-level jobs in areas like finance, consulting, tech, many other areas like that, entry-level white-collar work, I worry that those things are going to be first augmented, but before long replaced by AI systems, and that we may indeed. It's hard to predict the future, but we may indeed have a serious employment crisis on our hands as the pipeline for these early stage white collar work starts to contract and dry up.
What's the timeline here?
Yes, so it's very hard to predict these things given how fast AI is making progress. But I would not be surprised if somewhere between 1 and 5 years we started to see big effects here. I've heard a number of people.
Huh. That is a pretty conservative timeline compared to some of his colleagues.
People talk about this in private. AI CEOs talk about this in private. CEOs of other companies talk about this in private. And I really felt that the message that this is happening hasn't been getting out to ordinary people, hasn't been getting out to our legislators, our Congress people either. And so I felt I needed to speak up on the record. I do think that this is something we can prevent this, but we need to act now. I don't think we can stop the AI bus. There are 6 or 7 companies just in the U.S. working in this area.
Yeah, you can't stop it. It's an international problem at this point too. Like if you don't do it first, like Chinese companies will figure it out eventually.
Working in this area, I just run one of them. Even if our company stopped doing what it was doing today, all the other companies would continue. Even if all 6 companies started, then China would beat us. I think that's a big and important threat. So we can't stop the bus, but I do think we may have an opportunity to steer it. Yeah. And I think we need to get Congress people, legislators, the public to think about this now. One of the first steps we're taking.
Like you say, it's a legislator's problem, but like, how do you legislate a solution to entry-level work being like exercised? It's already happening somewhat. Like, I see it myself. Like, there's already a lot of companies that are basically just either not hiring entry-level workers, or they're looking for just mid-management, or they're using foreign work to cover up for entry-level stuff. Because I think people know, like, there's not the financial incentive to train a new generation in the short term. Like, especially even without AI, like things have gotten a lot more efficient, but AI makes it a lot worse. So yeah, why is it how do you fix it with legislation?
It's just measuring the effects. Anthropic has put out something that we call our economic index. And using the economic index, we try and track the rate at which these things are happening. At some point, we have to go beyond measuring this to actually taking action, to trying to build our AI systems in a way that augments rather than replaces. But that won't be a long-term solution either. We need to think about what the government is going to do. And there's a wide range of actions that the government could take. And it's not my place to decide which of those are correct. But I think the first step is people need to think about this and start taking it very seriously.
Yeah, and you're talking about AI possibly wiping out all entry-level white-collar jobs and spiking unemployment to 10 to 20%. So dive into the mitigation of this a little bit more. How could we mitigate the worst possible scenario here?
Yeah, so it's hard to know the exact numbers. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. But what I will say is I think what AI can do, there have been these technological changes in the past, but I think what's different about AI is it's broader, it's deeper, and it's moving faster than previous such technologies. And so in terms of mitigations, I think one is just educating people in order to use AI. There will always be people who are using AI, and helping our workers to adapt faster, I think is an important move. A second move is that we may want government to kind of find a way to level the economic playing field. And this may be a controversial proposal, but something like taxing AI companies like us, we may need to get.
And that's a very interesting message coming from you, who runs an AI company. But you're doing a public service announcement for all of us in terms of this future concern. Dario, thank you.
It's just, every time I hear him talk, I just get, I like their company. Man, he is just so bad at messaging. How about I take your shit and you die? Like, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of their vibe. It's really silly. So this is the one area of AI that I'm getting so interested in, that I think is being under discussed pretty dramatically, which is this real world situations happening where like people were getting a taste with AI in the same way that they were getting a taste with Uber before, when they first went to market, which is you have to give people the opportunity to have the ideal experience before you start charging them close to what it actually costs to deliver the product. So for the Uber, it was like going back to the early 2010s. I don't know if, something that everyone experiences, but if you go back to the early 2010s, you would have people who you could order an Uber sometimes for like $5 to $10 if it was short enough, or like $15 into the city and out. Now it's like 45 to 50, for this is for an Uber X. And, part of it's inflation, but it was customer acquisition first and foremost before anything else. And it's essential for any tech company. You have to get people using your product, and it has to feel invaluable, and part of getting an invaluable feeling from any product is having it built into your life, having it feel like it's like an essential part of your daily habits. Nothing is more important in that respect than your work, right? If someone runs a company and all of their employees become more efficient with the software, you can't get rid of it. It's like the Adobe suite. It's how they make their money, is that if you're a creative and you use Adobe, or even if you're a professional and use Acrobat for your PDFs and stuff, having the free version of that or having the paid version of that taken away is sometimes, it'll be a no-go oftentimes. It's obvious. So with AI, like, I have never seen like accurate numbers, but one intelligent query, like using the better thinking models, has to be like, it's just so much money compared to what people are accessing. So you're seeing this. So Goldman Sachs reports that companies are blowing past their AI inference budgets by orders of magnitude, with inference costs and engineering now approaching 10% of total headcount cost and potentially reaching parity with salaries within several quarters, which, by the way, is a huge reason why unemployment is just, we're not ready for what we're going to start seeing. Like, there's no way to deal with it, because the simple fact is that the people who can prompt the best, the people who are already in management roles, the people who are the most intelligent, but already established, are going to be able to leverage AI in such a way where it's not that businesses will immediately save money. It's that they are able to reduce headcount. And to reduce headcount is to reduce contingency issues. You always want less employees if you can manage it, because less employees is less points of failure. If you have one really good employee who can manage all of this himself, it's better than having 4 employees where one of them can get sick, or maybe they just stop enjoying their job as much and they put in less effort. Like, there's so many reasons that you could have for that. And that's the goal fundamentally. It's not even just cost savings initially. It's to have people out of work because companies don't want to employ people, and it's in their interest to have, minimal employment. So I don't think people are ready for that yet. But this is the sort of the way things are going to move, and this is just a start. Like, you're not going back from this unless the product just like implodes. Like, look at this, dude. 2,100 senior leaders and founded U.S. companies plan to spend an average of $170 million on AI over the next 12 months. And reminder, this is not investment into AI. This is just like the actual literal services. And these are conceptually discounted services. Like, maybe they'll get more efficient at some point, but like, when you think about the types of costs going into these data centers and prompting and the investment with that, like, this is to recuperate that. This is just the start. Asia Pacific firms are budgeting $245 million. Like, that's, they're going to spend so much. And like, what happens when you do that? I mean, there has to be losers, economy isn't zero sum, but it's definitely not, it's not so dialectical that you can just keep people employed. Like, there's no reason to do that. You'd have to increase material production to such a degree that it would be like, otherworldly. I wonder if my one viewer on Kick is a bot or not. Can you let me know, bro? Am I doing a good job? Is it entertaining enough? Kick viewer, if you exist. What? Is this real? Air Canada will suspend flights to JFK for nearly 5 months? No. What? Wow. That is absurd if it's true. Air Canada will suspend flights to JFK for nearly 5 months as jet fuel's costs soar. Canada's flag carrier said Friday that service from Toronto and Montreal to JFK will cease June 1st and resume October 25th. Services to New York metropolitan areas, 2 other airports, LaGuardia and Newark, will continue. Okay, so they're still able to get into the United States, but wow. 34 flights a day to those 2 airports from 16 Asian cities. As jet fuel prices have doubled since the start of the Iran conflict and some lower profitability routes and flights are no longer economic, we are making schedule adjustments accordingly. The average price for a gallon of jet fuel reached $4.32 on Thursday, up. That's like an almost double increase. We're not totally there yet, but almost double the cost of what it was during the Iranian war. Which again, jet fuel is not expensive by gallon. It's just how many gallons are used, and how it has to be passed on to the consumer. Fuel and labor costs are typically the largest annual expenses for airlines. Delta Air said this month that the tab for higher fuel would add $2 billion to its second quarter costs. Airlines, including JetBlue and United Airlines, are raising bag fees. That's crazy, dude. Another example of a disaster of this stupid war that wasn't even thought about for more than 5 seconds. Yeah, they're off the Vance train. Bro joined thinking it was going to be a pathway to being in the president's cabinet. No. Buckley Carlson, Senator Carlson, has departed the Trump administration, where he served as deputy press secretary to Vice President Vance and plans to launch his own political consulting firm. Yeah. He thought that the gravy train was going to come with him and didn't think about that well enough. Didn't see how ineffectual he is.
low.
It's like it's low effort, but dude, this guy is so funny to me.
All right, well, that is the show for today. I've got to do a bunch of low effort short slop that everyone's really mad about. I've got to do that, even though everyone does it, and instead of complaining about it, you could just do it yourself.
I don't know if everyone does it. I mean, it's just the problem is too, like, it's the reason why people have an issue with it, at least at the scale of like the quartering, is because it's one thing to do it in general to try to like make money or whatever. That's fine. Like, it's not cool. It kind of screws up the algorithm, but it's it's a strategy and people are doing it. It's that when you take a channel that is performing poorly but has old metrics like high view counts on old videos and high subscribers, pivoting into that, you have like, you're just further slopifying the market because your brand is no longer profitable. So your personal failing, like in your niche, the niche that you've competed for and took market space from, like, you've just denigrated it. You're screwing up the algorithm for that space, because then you're telling YouTube that the types of people who would subscribe to what should be a political channel like the quartering actually want to see these slop nothing shorts. But maybe they're different algorithms. It's embarrassing, for someone who should have something more sustainable. So I think that's why people make fun of him. But like, people, hold on. So we read through the Supreme Court article. Here's this guy's reading of it. True motive of Chief Justice Roberts to bend the rules to stop Obama's effort to regulate emissions. Roberts sees his role not as defending the Constitution, but instead as protecting the energy industry's profits, sparing the power sector from incurring any expenses in addressing climate change. This is the mentality of a lobbyist, not a judge. Like, people just like ignore like the Hamiltonian like basis of a lot of our country. Like, it's not just about defending business. It's like the energy system is critical to like our sovereignty. It's critical to, the proceduralism of it is critical to the balancing act of the branches of the government. Like, I agree that they don't hold the same level of smoke for Trump, which is, in some ways an issue. I do think there's a lot being lost because of that. Like, they should be more, they should be more consistent on it. But the fundamental is correct, which is that if you just let the executive do what it wants and you only are able to check them, you're not able to check them with Congress, and the courts can only respond after the damage has already been done. I mean, it's partisan to an extent, but like, I get it. Like, it makes sense. It's actually a good point. I like this point. It's true. At random points, Trump seems like the least radicalized person in his administration. They bring up the stupid SSRI talking point, and his reaction is just like, is that good or bad?
in the country.
See the clip.
Death for young adults today is suicide. Mr. President, antidepressants right now are the most prescribed class of medications in the country. Over 20% of women are on an antidepressant.
And is that good in terms of do they work?
There's highly problematic research on the fact that over 20% of U.S. women are on these drugs that are prescribed for life. We have a mental health crisis. And
do they work?
No. They don't. Maybe I'm on a couple of them. And
I would not have.
they don't.
I would not have.
There's the reason why the guy next to Oz is not answering.
Wait, I said I think I'd be next, but no, it is definitely an issue for women.
death for young adults.
Like, because it is like Trump's not a political guy. Like in his mind, like he's just kind of like, if a doctor tells him to take something, of course you take it. Like he's thinking like, you know, what is the, if it works, it works. Like he has to play the line. Like he has to like sort of like say what he has to say for his base occasionally. But like he really is not that, like, again, he's like a New York theater guy. Like none of this stuff matters to him. He wants power, but none of the actual like ideological debates or policy debates like mean anything to him if they don't get in the way of his personal ambitions.
Yo, he was like,
It's on clip time. It's on clip time.
First
Oh, it's loud. Jeez.
name, Rahm Emanuel.
no, but also it sucks because he said he would come on the show. He was like defending me. And not that I want him to come on the show, but no, definitely no.
Gavin Newsom.
No.
JD Vance.
No, absolutely no. So wait, is this who I'm voting for in 2028? Like what?
This is would you vote for it? Okay, let me tell you, based on what you know about them today, would you vote for these people in 2028?
Oh my God. JD Vance. No, I will never vote for a Republican ever.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Maybe. Now we're getting
Bro, the fact that it's a question of 2028, so not even the primary, the actual general, maybe
in the more comfortable waters. She's too anti-Medicare for all. You know, I think she's like,
bro, it's an election that's going to have like a moderate bent because of how much ground has been won by the Republicans. Like, Medicare for all is if you're not gung ho, if you're just skeptical of Medicare for all, it's over.
she's linked to the private healthcare industry, but better than others. Definitely more responsive as a governor. But I'm 50-50.
All right. AOC.
Yes.
Tucker Carlson.
No.
Cory Booker.
No.
Like just like no, it's unbelievable.
Absolutely not.
John Ossoff,
Again, interesting candidate, maybe.
Kamala Harris.
Oh God.
Just to be clear, Kamala Harris is, from my understanding, the furthest left general candidate there's been for the Democratic president, probably in like 50 years.
No.
Pete Buttigieg.
No.
And then they put it.
Here we go.
It's just crazy. That's crazy. Again, the Trump administration is good for him. He likes it. What can be said? What can be said? Who cares? It's just crazy. Then these people are recording them. Gotta use a bathroom. I will be right back. We're back. We're back. I kind of want to see where the full context of this. Oh, man. Bro. Like, it's just absurd. U.S. extends waiver on Russian oil sanctions to ease Iran war sources despite best in denial. It's just so awful. It's such a lifeline. U.S. Treasury said on Friday that it extended its pause and sanctions on Russian oil shipments. The so-called general license means U.S. sanctions will not apply for 30 days on deliveries of Russian oil that have been loaded on tankers as of Friday. It extended similar 30-day licenses issued in March for Russian oil that had been loaded by March 11th. The extension underscores how much the fall of the from Iran war has boosted Moscow's ability to profit from its energy exports, which has been restrained since the invasion of Ukraine. Speaking at the White House on Wednesday, President ruled out extending the license. We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil. The administration did not immediately explain this reversal. Bro, it's just so crazy because it's like the pivotal moment where Ukraine is now getting real gains on Russia. Like, there's actual developments where they're winning. They're winning fights. Their anti-drone technology is crushing them. Like, they are reporting 30,000 confirmed kills a year or a month. Like, or sorry, 30,000 casualties. Like, that's when we do the Iran war. That's when we throw Russia a lifeline. Like, who is more of a threat to United States interests, Russia or Iran? Like, reminder that a lot of Iran's funding comes from Russia. Like, a lot of their ability to even function at scale is a product of the relationship with Russia. So, like, the idea that, like, this is how we're like, all of these billions and billions of dollars of weaponry that could have gone to Ukraine is going to fight a war in Iran that's going to basically has effectively so far installed a more hostile force into the region. That's installed the IRGC as the de facto leaders of Iran. And then we're giving Russia oil sanctions waivers because of our domestic market that we self-inflicted from this war. It's just, it's crazy, man. Like, if I was more conspiratorial, I would definitely be at this point wondering if there were some shady situations going on with this, because this is just unbelievable. It's been just a little light in flavor, huh? Weird. Tastes normal, I guess. It's just crazy, man. It's just crazy. Like, we're doing everything in our power to reduce Ukraine's ability. I want to see what is the source for this? Like, what is the source? Is it this?
All these
Yes, it's
fascists.
this. Okay. Let's watch this. So for context, we're watching this because I just after seeing this clip where Hassan explains that he won't be voting for this list of people for as 2028 candidates, I wanted to see the full context because there's no way he is saying that Kamala Harris, oh God, no, or Pete Buttigieg over GD Vance. There's no way is what he means. So we're gonna, watch the whole thing.
All these fascist forces in this country are screaming from the rooftops, and they chose the issue of Israel to attack me on, which is the most base uniting position. They took a 90-10 issue and chose to be on the 10% side of this 90-10 issue.
Hassan Piker's name has been everywhere lately. Not for winning an election, not for passing legislation, not for doing anything really, except for yapping. And depending on who you ask, he's either one of the most dangerous voices in American politics or one of the most honest.
It's not just for yapping. He's a pundit. He's a lot of, if not influence, so he takes up a lot of the media's time.
Hassan is among one of the biggest voices on the American left. His megaphone is a Twitch stream where he spends about 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, breaking down political news to an audience that skews young and male. And if you listen to him long enough, you can see why. He's blunt, if not crass.
Does it actually skew male, in a distinct way? I've never seen that stuff.
He toes the line between relatable and aspirational. He's deeply influential, and of course, he's controversial.
This is a thug. This is an extremist. This is an advocate for terrorism.
Which is why some factions of the Democratic Party have been beefing with him for the last few weeks, pointing to off-color comments he's made over the years. I sat down with Hassan Piker to talk about exactly that. We talked about why Fox News.
It's not about the off-color comments. It's about the political content of them. The vulgarity is one thing, and some people complain about the anti-Semitism, but it's more that the content is radical. It's very, very radical.
Can't stop covering him, the ideological battles inside the Democratic Party, what he really thinks about Israel, and what, if anything, the Democrats could do to earn his vote in 2028. This is my chat with Hassan Piker. Enjoy.
Again, earn his vote in 2028? Bro, look at how bad the first 2 years of Trump have been. How could, this guy is not on the left side, clearly, or he's not a Democrat Party person.
Piker, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
Very excited to be on.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Well, I guess this is an interesting way to start, which is that you talk a lot, man. You talk respectfully, right? You talk, it's the job. But I wonder, what do you think has contributed the most to your kind of current position in the national media spotlight? If I were to kind of give you a few options, I think obviously the out of context clip economy is an option here. Maybe you talk about Israel and Palestine and progressive things.
They're not ever out of context, by the way, just to be clear. Almost every time someone on the left says the Hassan clip is out of context, what it means is that they like the context, they support the context.
And conservative things. But what would you say has kind of put you at the center of the discourse?
I mean, it's hard to figure out exactly what is the highest offense because I have an anti-imperialist framework. I'm socialist. These are not exactly ideas that a lot of people are fond of hearing, especially, corporate-backed mainstream institutions. And then,
by the way, this also isn't really true. On the left, people are very, very open. The Democratic Party, people are very, very open to socialist rhetoric. The problem is the third worldism. It's the support of terrorism.
My position on Israel, of course, is also very frustrating for a lot of people. But I would say that the fact that I speak on a contentious format that is very interactive on polarizing issues from a perspective that is of the left, a perspective that many Americans are either unfamiliar with or taught to be antagonistic towards, combine all of that, and of course, you're going to have an inevitability such as this.
I guess on a personal level, how are you processing the onslaught of criticism? I mean, we'll get into the politics of it all in a bit, but I'm curious how you're doing personally. This is the first one, but this one's been maybe a bit different. Would you agree?
Yeah, but it's been different, not in a negative way.
It's different because his PR firm has gotten him to, a pretty high point of popularity.
It's actually been quite positive. I don't find these last couple of weeks.
By popular, I mean people in the media who otherwise wouldn't have known about him because Twitch is such a separate thing. It's becoming more integrated in mainstream discourse, even if his viewership numbers are the same as they've been for years.
I mean, I find it strange that it's been going on for the past couple of weeks. Nothing goes on for more than 4 days in America. In our current news cycle, this has been the most resilient thing. And I think it's partially because, I'm live all the time. So I'm obviously going to give Fox News more ammo every single day, as they have been. They've been updating the RNC research department is constantly posting new clips of me every day. I even joked.
But they never talk about it being Hassan. It's a way to attack Democrats. It's because they can use Hassan as a cutout to say, look at what this chief Democrat is saying. Meanwhile, it seems like this is going to be an interview about how the Democratic Party hasn't even earned his vote.
About it at the Yale Union last night, where I was like, today we're going to talk about the resolution in the American Empire, and then tomorrow your grandparents are going to hear about it on Fox News, which is literally happening right now. So I guess that's a big part of it as well. Maybe some Republicans think this is a great opportunity to tie someone that they consider to be radical to the Democratic Party so they can attack the Democratic Party. And then there's plenty of right-wing forces in the Democratic Party who also recognize that there's an ideological battle within the party itself. The idea that we talk about, big tent or who's in the tent, whatnot, all this stuff actually is a pretty basic spiritual fight
that the Democrats have conducted and the centrist have.
I mean, he's right in the sense that like what he's doing, he's one of the only people who actually is aware of what's going on when he comes on the Democratic spaces, which is it's trying to he's trying to get his faction, which would be like Marxist, to become a more dominant faction in the Democratic Party, not to ally with them, but to control the party, to either have them move in their direction or to literally control it, which doesn't seem to be what most Democrat officials who talk to him think is what he's trying to do for whatever reason.
Successfully defeated the left flank over and over again up until recently. That's the heart of it. Could you name that spiritual fight? Like, what are the two sides of that fight? Yeah, I mean, we saw probably the most visible version of this in 2016. It was Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was an establishment Democrat.
Again, like maybe they're both just dumb. It's not a two-side spiritual fight. There's a lot of different factions at play. There's more so in the Republican Party and their factional disputes. But for Democrats, you'll have blue dog Democrats who are the more moderate, if not conservative Democrats. You have the core Democrats, which are people like the CNN viewer base, the people who vote blue no matter who lean, they might lean right in some ways, but left in some ways. They're just the typical Democrats. You have the progressives who are still liberals, but they are, pushing generally for very, very progressive social reform, if not also economic reform, but they lean more social. They're id poll obsessed. That's where a lot of the woke stuff comes from, is like those types of people where their major concerns seem to be id poll. And you have socialists who, again, care about id poll, but these are people who see themselves still maybe as liberal in some way, or oftentimes anti-Marxist, anti-fascist, but they're still socialists. That's like the Bernie supporters, generally speaking. And then you have Marxists. Those are a totally separate group of people. Those are communists. They're people who don't care about id poll, and they're people who want to undermine the Constitution, get rid of the Constitution because it prevents a Marxist revolution. Or at the very least to get the United States out of the way from other countries that have more potential for revolution. So Hassan's in that Marxist camp, so he's really oppositional to almost everyone further right than the DSA.
Very right wing on many issues that pertain to the economy, right? Definitely socially progressive, but has switched that around as well. Much more malleable to right wing forces, not coming at the issue from a place of consistent moral principles, but more so just like focus tested. The type of person that you think of when you say establishment, the type of person that you think of when you see when you think about someone who's a spokesperson for a bank. And then on the other side, you had Bernie Sanders. Love him or hate him, he's honest, right? Like this is what he believes. He's been fighting for the same exact battle for 80 plus years. He was earnest, sometimes too stubborn, sometimes came across as like a curmudgeon, but it's authentically him. And of
that's true. I really dislike Bernie, but he's very authentic. That's why he's gotten nothing done in Congress, and Clinton got quite a lot done.
Of course, ideologically, he's on the left, pro-worker, pro-labor unions, Medicare for all, free college education, things like that. I mean, these were identifiable policies that people associate with him. Bernie Sanders was able to unite.
Again, what's weird is that that's not really what makes him further to the left. It's because of the rationalization for those opinions. But a lot of blue dog Democrats will be in some ways more pro-free stuff, or like, for instance, like blue dog Democrats will go hard on deregulating certain things or reducing government red tape. So like someone like Bernie Sanders will make building houses a lot harder oftentimes if they're not accommodating for affordable housing, while blue dog Dems will want much more housing available for the middle class through projects that might give developers more money but also create more homes. So it's not as simple as he wants to give you all of this nice free stuff.
A lot of people, but more importantly, he was able to offer the language and maybe even begin the political journey for a lot of people. I mean, even including people like Zohran Mamdani, who openly admits like Bernie Sanders is what caused him to realize like, oh, maybe I'm a democratic socialist. That was pretty big. It's pretty big for the DSA. It's pretty big for, I think, Western left to a certain degree. Definitely huge for the American left movement. And now we're seeing the fruits of that a decade later.
Yeah, I want to come back to the policy stuff in a bit, but I do want to hold on you here for another kind of beat. It feels like maybe there's an effort to cancel you, but I don't know how you're perceiving that. You feel, do you think there's an effort to cancel you, to deplatform you, and if so, why? If so, why not?
Cancellation, I don't think is real. I'll just say it. I don't think it's real. I mean, sometimes I wish it was, because there's a lot of people I'm like, we shouldn't listen to this guy, and perhaps that's how Jake Tapper feels about me.
Anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. So why are so many Democrats doing campaign events with him?
I personally feel that way about, like, I don't know, 90% of the dudes I have to deal with in the space that I'm in. The Andrew Tates, the Claviculars, the Sneakos of the world, and that's why they think I'm a woke scold, a joy killer, annoying left person that's censorious.
Why do you guys talk about a bunch of people who aren't really political? Like, Sneeko has politics stuff, but like he's the most political out of those people. But like, maybe talk about that was weird. That was weird. That was a little
But those are the trenches I'm fighting in. I don't think it's real though. I don't think especially in this day and age when there are so many different platforms that you can be on.
I mean, it's absolutely real. It's just that it's very, very difficult to get deplatformed if you're very to the left on a lot of these platforms. It's just true. Like if you're not like if you're not like calling for violence, which even he does a lot, like it's hard to get deplatformed from that. So like, but there is a lot of people calling for it. It just won't happen. Like he would have been deplatformed from Twitch at this point if they were listening to the popular messaging. It's just that clearly the people at Twitch are fans of him.
You can claw yourself back to relevancy, as Nick Fuentes clearly did. I mean, he got hit with the full scope of deplatforming at a time when people were like, oh, that's a white nationalist neo-Nazi. Like, we're not going to, I mean, he's an open white nationalist neo-Nazi. We're just not going to put him on our platforms. Like, it doesn't exist anymore. And cancel culture, on top of that, I think only works if your audience decides, like if your people decide that you're not serious or you've done something worthy of cancel.
It's just not, like, he's kind of right, but like he's missing the fact that like sometimes you get removed from a platform, you get canceled by the fact that your base, like your viewership won't come with you. Like it was very difficult for people like Fuentes to come back after getting deplatformed. They had to kind of start from ground zero almost.
Like the things that people want to cancel me over, quote unquote, cancel me over on CNN.
And then more importantly, like with Fuentes, a great example is that like he was pretty irrelevant for a while. Even just kind of like, you know, he was able to stay afloat in the background, but he was pretty irrelevant. Like his true comeback in the last couple of years has been due to the ability for his clips to go viral on Instagram, like constantly. But it's because Instagram allows those clips to be posted and to remain up. Like that's explicitly why. So like to say canceling and deplatforming isn't, you know, massively going to impact sort of the viability of that stuff is just it's either he's either just lying or doesn't know.
Are ridiculous. That's why people listen to me. You know, they'll be like, oh, he's vulgar.
You have become an issue within the Democratic Party yourself. Tell us about that. I don't think I'm necessarily an issue within the Democratic Party as much as I am an issue for a lot of consultants.
Yeah, I speak for 21,000. I've spoken on Twitch for 21,000 hours. And
again, the majority of the Democratic Party is extremely liberal. You know, capital L liberal. Like you are anti them. You are absolutely not a part of that.
Yes, I'm vulgar. I'm vulgar towards right wingers. I'm vulgar towards reactionaries. I'm going to bully bullies. That's kind of the whole point of why people are watching me. And then they'll be like, oh, he's vulgar towards people who defend Israel. It's like, yeah, I'm an anti-Zionist. And guess what? So is 90% of the party's base at this point. Maybe not to the same degree, but like people don't like Israel. So that's the second reason why I think this entire.
When he says they're anti-Zionist, it's just not true. If you look at polling, they're anti-Bibi Netanyahu. They're anti-Likud party. They're anti-right-wing Israeli. Vast majority of the Democratic Party, especially with how many Gen Xers and Boomers are still alive. Or boomers, I mean, Gen Xers are pretty young still. But like, remember, like the majority of the actively voting Democratic Party is Gen X and Boomers, and they are super pro-Israel, super pro-Israel. Like they are two-staters. They support Israel's right to exist or whatever, but they're just anti-Netanyahu, anti-Likud.
Hassan is a danger. We must stay away from him. Narrative has been so funny because like even from the start, I had a lot of people calling me up. Two funny things happened. One, a bunch of politicians hit me up to be like, hey, I hope you're doing all right. I'm not going to reveal. A bunch of people in politics hit me up to be like, hey, I hope you're doing all right. I know things are, I know things are hectic, right? You know, it's never great to be on the receiving end of this like barrage of hate. And I was like, I'm chill. Like, I'm cool. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, this is great for me. These guys don't even understand. This is a marketing campaign pretty much. You got Fox News and corporate Democrats, AIPAC, AD.
The question is, when you say it's good for you, like, where's the conversion? Because like his viewership numbers are the same, and he's still behind Asmongold, and Asmongold's on an alt account. Like, it's just like, is it good for you? I mean, it keeps you relevant, I guess, but is it?
Third way. All of my enemies, all of the people whose politics I find to be repulsive, all these undemocratic forces in this country, all these fascist forces in this country are screaming from the rooftops, and they chose the issue of Israel to attack me on, which is the
undemocratic. When he wants to get rid of democracy, he wants to install, a dictatorship with the proletariat or whatever.
Most like base uniting position. They took a 90-10 issue and chose to be on the 10% side of this 90-10 issue.
It's not a 90-10 issue. It's impressive he gets to lie about it, but it's not 90-10.
So yeah, they can yell at me every day, but it's going to backfire on them, which it did, which is why they then started trying to shift the narrative to Hassan is dangerous in many other different ways, ideologically dangerous in many other different ways. And also we should probably stop talking about him. He's just irrelevant. It was like, well, we're on the fourth week now.
I mean, again, like if you show the Democratic Party voting base a guy saying he's a harm reductionist voter, and that means he won't publicly vote for Kamala over Trump, but he would vote for Hamas over Israel. If they see that statement, they would say yes, he's a danger to the party. But
like, why are you still talking about it? Yeah, I'm irrelevant. Give it up.
I find it genuinely interesting that two of the loudest anti-Zionist voices in American media right now are you and Tucker Carlson. It feels like you guys are almost like the most prominent, loudest, most consistent voices against Zionism and against what Israel is doing in the world. And what do you make of the rise of anti-Zionism on the right?
I wouldn't even say Tucker Carlson would call himself an anti-Zionist. He'd be like, anti-Zionist? I don't even know what that means. He'd be like, I love Israel. You won't hear me say that, okay? Like, let me tell you, I'm not, like, from my assessment, a country is not always going to be representative of every single individual in it, but like a country can be representative of an ideology. And I think Israel has evolved into its last stage of fascism at this point. Tucker clearly doesn't feel that way.
Such a weird thing of saying something like that. Like, what does that even mean? You think Israel is going to dissolve? At the last stage of fascism, like the last stage of Israeli fascism is where you have 20% of your population is Arab. They have the same rights as every other citizen, and you also have Arab representation in the parliamentary government. Like, and then that Arab constituency probably supports the security aims of the Israeli right. Like, this is just like such a like uncritical, like, even if you're anti-Israel, like, just lying like that means you either have no idea what you're talking about, or you're just like making stuff up to hope it flies over people's heads and you can just will into existence this 90-10 consensus that doesn't exist.
I think Tucker is a very dangerous propagandist. He has a higher priority for always pushing the platform of what I like to call WASP nationalism.
Does anybody really believe, any adult actually think that white racism is the biggest?
Tucker's WASP nationalism of the early 2000s is well and alive in his blatant third worldism now, where he's aligning with people like Alexander Dugin, who is literally as explicitly anti-white as possible. He doesn't see the Russians as being white. He sees there being the necessity for third worldism. And Tucker Carlson is probably aligning himself with that, and Islamic society broader, more and more. Like, yeah, WASP nationalism, bro. Come on.
Problem in America's inner cities.
We saw a version of his room reading and his capabilities of being that dangerous propagandist, like normalizing the Great Replacement theory and numerous other white supremacist talking points on the main stage, when all the way back in 2016, when he was the most popular Fox News broadcaster, the most popular news network in the country, he regularly talked about economic populism. He would talk about workers' rights.
Today it's McDonald's employees, tomorrow will be millions of truck and taxi drivers with self-driving cars. Eventually it will be lawyers and physicians and so on. Will it ever be
like, again, but the idea of trying to interject Tucker Carlson's from Fox News with Tucker Carlson post Fox News, he has ideologically become like almost the opposite of what he was then. It's just this kind of like uncritical stuff. It's you have to assume everyone involved in these sort of videos is just malicious, like extremely malicious.
Paper columnists and cable news anchors. We're praying not.
And then he would associate that agenda with legacy Americans, with what his version of making white nationalism more palatable. Instead of saying like white Americans, he would say legacy Americans, because he can't say Native Americans, obviously. So he's doing that with Israel. I think that's my assessment. I can't know what's in his heart, because sometimes he will say things or he will do certain things. Like when he went to the Palestinian Children's Hospital in Qatar, I was like, I think maybe this might have changed him a little bit. Like, he might be sincere in his advocacy on that issue sometimes, but I still see him as a dangerous propagandist for a repulsive, very toxic ideology that's ironically not dissimilar to the one demonstrated in Israel through Zionism. It's just there's a different in-group and a different out-group. Now, that's the way I see Tucker's version of events. A lot of people get mad at me. I think he's even more popular than myself, certainly, and maybe even more popular at this stage on the issue of Israel as well.
You say that Israel is entering like its final stage of fascism. What do you mean by that?
Zionism, from its inception, has been an ideology that is an ethno-religious supremacist ideology. There's an in-group, there's an out-group dynamic. It's identical to.
I get it, but you can call it ethno-religious, but non-supremacist. It doesn't make any sense. You'd have to actually have like the idea that you have something that's supremacist, and then other ethnic groups have the same rights as you do if they're citizens. That's just, you can say it's ethno. It's an ethno state where they're trying to maintain a Jewish majority, but you can't just lie about like the supremacy part unless you're like that. That's an example of sort of the evil propaganda that he would accuse Carlson of if he's describing, things like that from like a right-wing perspective.
Historic fascist movements. And at its inception, there was the Nakba, a lot of violence that took place leading up to the Nakba, and certainly during the Nakba.
There's two sides to the Nakba.
In 47 and 48, where 750,000 indigenous Palestinians were expelled from their homes, ethnic cleansing, and they were never allowed to return back to their houses, right? That was an
at the same time, you have quite a lot of Jews from that area being cleansed from, old settlements as well as, family homes, while also having, pogroms across the Middle East. Like, it's not that simple.
Violent event. And there have been times where Israel spiritually continued that process, but Israel has maintained apartheid for 80 years.
Spiritually Israeli.
At this point,
since awesome. You just be racist on the left, and there's no issue with it.
Of Israel. And the apartheid practice is obviously racially discriminatory and devastating for the almost 15 million Palestinians that live all around the world, some of which are not allowed to return to the occupied territories, and some of which currently live under the oppressive Israeli apartheid state, half in the West Bank, occupied Palestinian territory, and half in Gaza, which is a hermetically sealed open-air prison.
Open-air prison, right.
Yeah. So that practice has been going on, whether Americans pay attention to it or not, and it's one that Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, many other figures have correctly pointed out as apartheid. These are people who have fought against apartheid in Africa, right?
This is a good place for me to then kind of actually double back.
The difference being, like, in South Africa, these were both like citizen groups. These were intra-citizens, meaning that like the white South Africans were legally oppressing a group by denying them equal rights or whatever. Like, that's a very different process from occupied territories that are trying to establish independence. Like, these are, you can say they're both bad, but like it's to call it apartheid is just, it misses the point of apartheid. The bad part about apartheid was not just the fact that these people didn't have the same rights. The problem was it was a unequal distribution of rights to citizens. It's sort of a distinct sort of like no-no of any nation state. But Israel explicitly doesn't do that with their Arab citizens. That's the whole issue. It would be different if they were just trying to occupy. It would be different if they claimed to annex like the West Bank, right? But they're not. That's the issue. Like the settlements might be types of annexation, but they're not annexing areas and then trying to integrate the Arabs as citizens with different rights.
Because I want to ask you about
if you
why do you
today
think,
with how the way Israel works, say they annex the West Bank, and the reason they won't, this is the reason why they're not annexing, this is why they're doing the settlement strategy. If they annex the West Bank, all of those Arabs would have to become citizens. They won't do it for that reason, right? It would be so simple to annex it because it's already occupied territory. But they won't do it, and it's because they don't want to do apartheid because they know it wouldn't be sustainable on the world stage.
Democrats have such a hard time accepting you, a person like you, into their ranks? I look at Graham Plattner, who, similar to you, has said some disagreeable, if not like outright awful, terrible, bad things in this past, or Jeff Duncan, who championed like legitimately awful policy in Georgia. And it appears that there's room for those people. Obviously, everyone's talking about Liz Cheney on the campaign trail with Vice President Kamala Harris. So there's space for those folks, but why not a person like you? For some Democrats.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think a lot of the people who hate me also hate Graham Plattner. So there are a lot of Democrats who also are like, don't vote for me.
I mean, they're just not similar at all. Plattner also is like almost like borderline Marxist aligned, but like Plattner is a very he's a very like authentic candidate in the sense that like he's got like a whole thing. He's got a whole angle where it's like he's very responsive to the state he's from. Like it's why he's so pro-gun, like someone like Hassan, and he doesn't do idpol really. The reason that someone like Hassan is uniquely repulsive is because he'll do something like support terrorists in like a third worldist Marxist sense, but then do idpol the next day because if it benefits him. So it's like this really nasty sort of distribution of like, there's something very off about it. Like you feel it when you're listening to him. It's super off. But with something like Plattner, like a lot of people don't like him. And I would say again, like you see the messaging around Plattner. People see him as a much more real, tangible threat than Hassan. It's more Hassan is a uniquely aesthetically revolting vibe to him.
Graham Plattner. And even then, I feel like I don't have the same past as Graham Plattner. I mean, not his like Reddit posts. I don't care about that stuff. But I'm talking about like his experience, going to war and maybe even joining.
And that past gives him a lot of credibility with the voter. That's why he's seen as a threat. You don't have any of the credibility.
Blackwater, like I feel like there's some red flags there. We're having a totem cop tattoo.
Just a small red flag.
There's stuff that I have also personally been like, that's an insane thing. I can't believe nobody stopped that or called you out for having a Nazi tattoo on your chest. But like, I actually do find Graham Plattner to be one of the most interesting candidates. And he is, again, another Bernie-crat. And I obviously have some sympathies for that. And I think that he is the perfect guy to prove something that we've been saying for many, many years, which is that you can actually take out a red state Republican senator or, purple state with left populism. And he's the proof, which is, I think, the real reason why a lot of people get mad at Graham Plattner.
I think Plattner's a much better candidate than Mills. Mills is horrible as a candidate, but like, is it a real question? Like, can he win Maine against Collins? Like, I don't know. Maybe the unpopularity of the Trump administration gives him the opportunity, but like, also, like Plattner is a very unique candidate compared to other leftists that Hassan will advocate for to be in power or to win elections, because like it's not the easiest pill to swallow, but like it's a lot easier to sell left-wing populism, especially economic populism, when it's combined with like this burly looking white dude with a deep voice, with a military record, and who's also very soft on a lot of pro-Republican issues like gun rights, and talks about things like transgenderism in a very like understandable manner. Like that is not the kind of candidate that the DSA usually runs. And more importantly, it's the kind of candidate that will probably not be on the DSA party line on everything. He will bend on the things that are, that would make him competitive in a state like Maine. So it's not comparable to like take him and then compare like that sort of campaign to like any of the Bernie acolytes, because they ran on those specifically unpopular platforms with unpopular aesthetics. Like, and on the basis that they wouldn't bend the party line,
Plattner had that background as a machine gunner, had the totem cuff tattoo on his chest, but then was talking about sensible policy around healthcare. Let's talk about affordability. Let's not talk about free healthcare. If he was like, saying, I will never take AIPAC funding, but Israel is our most valuable ally, not a single one of these Democratic Party consultants that have been freaking out about him would say a damn thing. Okay, they wouldn't. Same thing goes for me. The reason why a lot of people are yelling at me on the Democratic Party side is because of what I represent. They don't want to hear from people like me. They don't want to hear that people like me have a big audience. They don't want to hear that people like me are representative of large forces in the party. They don't want to hear that at all. They want to live in an echo chamber, live in a totally separate reality where Americans will forget about Israel. They won't talk about our relationship with this country. They won't talk about genocide, and they'll just vote for the Democrats for harm reduction
actually
reasons,
insane,
right?
like thing to think. Like you understand that in general, no one like really cares about foreign policy. Like it's people should probably start to wonder, or at least publicly question, why is the Israel question so important for them?
It's very clear that that's what they wanted to do in 2024. It failed. I mean, you saw me at the DNC. I was running around telling them, "Don't do this. You're going to lose. Like, this is terrifying. You guys are celebrating for no reason."
We are still never been provided with any of that information on how anyone could construe that was the reason why Kamala lost. Like, there's no public reporting, no public polling, no anything. Just as the only state where it could have mattered was Michigan, and that was not why she lost. So
you're doing end zone dances, but it's not a guarantee at all. And by the final day of the DNC, when I heard Kamala Harris's speech, after I'd already got my press credentials revoked as well for some of the things I was saying about the DNC not having a Palestinian speaker, I heard Kamala Harris say, "I'm going to oversee the most lethal military." I was like, "This is so bad. It's over. Like, this is going to be devastating." And it turned out to be true. Democrats want to go back to business as usual politics, where they don't have to be responsive, where they don't have to change their methods, because they want to keep collecting corporate donations. They don't want to do their jobs. They don't want to actually represent their constituents. They just want to be the marginally better alternative to the growth of fascism in this country.
In a way, I think they're
better. Like, the gulf between the Trump admin and the Biden admin is so immense at every level, from policy to aesthetics to whatever. Like, doing both sidesing like that in the neocon era actually makes a lot of sense, because these were the neocons and neoliberals were people that really did have core ideological similarities that kept them pretty tied to one another. But so the debates were more about policy or whatever, or international policy especially. But that is not the case with Trump or any of the factions. Comparing truly not, I wouldn't say fascist, but fascistic ideologies like post-liberalism or Groypers or other types of America First or the third world, it's like the Sneeko types. And then even the Trump core base, the way that they've changed the dynamics of the Republican Party. To say that it is marginally different, it's just you can think it's an irrelevant difference, but marginally, it's just it's like a blatant lie.
There's this sense out there that you are so against Democrats. So why do you even make an effort? Why do you even caucus with these folks? Why are you trying to help certain Democrats get elected? Why not go out and do something totally different? That's kind of a Twitter kind of conversation, kind of criticism that I see of you. What's your response to that?
Well, you gotta go where the base is. In the United States of America, the overwhelming
not true. It's because his career is fucked. That's the real answer. When you're out of power, it's really, really when the left is out of power electorally, it's much harder to do media messaging that's anti-democrat as your core. You have to try to occupy the party, and he doesn't care about political power. It's more about the brand. It's just a difficult message to sell if you're not doing this.
Still base are they're self-identifying liberals. They might not actually be liberals when you dial in and figure out exactly the things that they would advocate for, the things that they would believe. I obviously my perspective, it comes from a Marxist tradition. I see things from a class perspective, or at least a class first perspective.
Again, at least we're being honest about this. But again, Democrats who collaborate should then be asked that question: why are you collaborating uncritically with the Marxists?
There are elements, especially in American politics, that are very relevant, like race. Whether I like to admit it or not, most Americans are liberal. They self-identify as liberal, and this even includes
almost all, 99%.
Republicans as well. You have to talk to people with the language they understand if you want to mobilize them, if you want to make them a more productive social force, a force for change.
This is true. At least
and
being honest
the
about
Democratic Party is a much closer vehicle, or a much closer agent for that change, even if it will never be a workers' party.
It reminds me of something that Angela Davis said during the 2024 election, which is that electing Kamala Harris would allow for more radical kind of organizing in the future. Is kind of the argument that she made for voting for Kamala Harris. And you said something that I want to kind of hold on, because out of all the things that you've kind of faced criticism for, the things that you said, in my kind of corner of the internet, there are a couple of clips going around. I'm on the black corner of the internet, and a couple of clips are going around of you being pretty dismissive to black folks kind of in your comment section. There's the root.com kind of comment that you made, which was a completely unnecessary blow to the root. Come on, man, the root's doing good work.
Sometimes root.com article regurgitators in here instantly being like, sweetie, you don't understand black people.
So you said this thing at the end of your kind of rant about standpoint theory. And I think a common critique of leftists is that they can be a bit class reductionist and dismiss the race and racism kind of issues at play in America, which you just touched on. And I want to know what your perspective is there, because there's a real critique out there that Hassan...
Just to be clear, Hassan does not care about any of this at all. And when he does pay lip service to it, it's just, again, it's because he understands IDPOL is really important to sell the message to a broader audience.
Piker is anti-black after those clips have played. And I want you to respond to that criticism specifically.
Of course. So I'm not, but I understand why, as we talked about already, in short bursts, when you clip something, when I'm talking for 21,000 hours, very easy to present me as something I'm not. And the inception of this was, ironically enough, many, many years ago when I ratioed Nicki Minaj. That's when Black Twitter was like, fuck this guy. Can I curse on the show? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can curse. You're free. Be free.
Nicki Minaj famously talked about her cousin's balls.
Yeah.
And I tweeted something back, and I was like, the world is awaiting your scientific contributions, something like that. And I ratioed her, and I got the attention of the Barbs. And back then, they were a much more powerful force. Now the Barbs are in shambles. I feel like finally, as she totally leaned into the Trump administration and is doing whatever she's doing now, that discourse is now over. But at the time, bars were very mad at me because I was in the process of replying to her about her allegiance with Tucker Carlson, being like, Nicki Minaj, like, Tucker Carlson's a white supremacist. Like, what are you doing? And everybody got mad at me. They're like, this is a black woman. You're talking over a black woman. You think a black woman doesn't know who a white supremacist is? And there is this reactionary attitude that I think some Americans have, even some black Americans do. Obviously, they've experienced white supremacy. That's the primary anti-blackness is the primary form of hatred that persists, and it's become fairly sophisticated in the ways that it is demonstrated through every orifice of.
It's baking it back into class analysis. I don't know if people notice what he's doing here, but this is like one of the more clever things he can do. He's sometimes, I don't know if you just paid attention enough reading to kind of get this, but what he's doing there is he's absorbing, because this is such a friendly platform and far left enough that you can do this without it being super alienating. He's taking like the id pull angle, so like the perspective, the viewpoint based analysis, meaning that like accounting for lived experience and racism and systemic injustice or whatever. And he's explaining how you can reduce that into a class-based analysis still, where the perspective matters still, but that you're confusing like white supremacy as some independent vehicle that in fact it's tied to the capital class, and that the capital holding class, it deploys white supremacy. It's he's not doing it like super well, but like it's not like academically rigorous, but it's a very like good rhetorical strategy to kind of get this idea baked into people, so you can say, well, no, you can still be anti-racist and you can still have that as like a structural focus, but it's because it's class based. Like you're able to do both, like because the foundation is class. But the real problem electorally with that, and like the real reality bending issue, is why leftists really get frustrated with black people, is that like black Americans, especially black men, are very big into capitalism because they are very big into entrepreneurship. Like that is just something that like has been resilient since before the civil rights era. Like it's not about like they don't agree with the class-based analysis, broadly speaking, and that was a challenge that even black Marxists were not able to overcome when there was much more salience for those issues, when there was much more material differences between communities, intra-race, let alone extra-race. Like the simple fact is that black communities just want more opportunity. They don't really care about this class-based discussion. Like the id poll will work, but this will never work probably in our lifetime. Like you would need to see such immense structural changes to black electoral politics that like it's like not even worth, like you can just be honest and say there's not a demographic we're going to reach.
American existence, right? You don't have to just straight up say certain slurs or make certain comparisons, although Trump will do it every now and then, like with the Barack and Michelle Obama AI video. While still being able to get that message across that you are anti-black, right? Urban style individuals, the utilization of terms like thug, or even as Lee Atwater famously said, welfare, like attacking certain policies in an effort to attack black people without ever mentioning black people whatsoever. So these two issues are directly aligned with one another, because anti-blackness, while the identification of it is on racial boundaries, the impact of it is still very much class violence, right? Yeah,
like there it is.
It turns back into a class issue at the end of the day.
Well,
black people are overwhelmingly a part of the working class. Ironically enough, in modern America, black people are also black people have the highest union participation rate amongst all of the different ethnic and racial groups in this country.
There's another issue is that when he talks about unions, like he's talking about it in the goal of like union class displacing capital, but like the union class in America, private union enrollment has decreased so much over time. So like, again, that has to be a goal. That's a goal for a lot of socialists or social democrats, is to increase private unionship. But again, these are people who are mega capitalists still. Like they're not thinking like they don't want to have like the means of production. They want a fair share is what they think. Like they want their companies to make more money. They want their communities to become richer, but they want it to be based around hard work, so that like the harder you work, the more money you get, not that to displace the capital, whatever. Especially for like black union workers. Like it's a much less extravagant process. It's just about fairness. These are so capitalist. These are so liberals.
Work in these jobs for the most part. So like the violence that black people experience, the targeting is racial, but the violence they experience is still class violence, right? So that's my broader perspective. And as far as standpoint epistemology goes, or at least we're going to talk about root.com, one of the things that I've seen, and maybe I shouldn't be saying some of these things because I'm white, but there is anti-blackness in every aspect of American society, including in liberal commentary. And my criticisms of root sometimes revolves around not identical, but somewhat similar versions of anti-blackness that I see and hear from Republicans, but that is maybe demonstrated in a more liberal adjacent way. And my common critique always is around the way that black men are portrayed in some liberal circles. Black men in general are still infinitely more progressive than white men are. Like that's such a ridiculous thing. And we see versions of this. We saw versions of this with even like Barack Obama coming out and saying, if you don't want to
like, what is this like? Are we just making this up? I've never seen anything that would indicate that, like objectively. Like, what are we talking about?
Kamala Harris,
like you say this, and then like, like black men like have absurdly high rates of homophobia when it comes to electoral politics. Like Pete Buttigieg is at 0% in almost every poll for black men because of their homophobia. Like, sorry, bro, it's just a fact. Like, to call them one of the most progressive voting groups is just like, I don't even know if they're economically progressive.
Man, like you might just be a little misogynistic. Like, what are you doing? You know, and I thought that was also a ridiculous thing to say. Now, of course, I'm white. Barack Obama is black, and not only is he black, he was the president, right? So he's a profoundly important figure. So when
I like how he'll morph from sometimes he's Muslim and brown, sometimes he's white.
I say something like that, I think people hear that and go, "You're way too confident, white boy." Right? You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be saying things like that. So there have been instances like that where you know, my advocacy or the things that I talk about will rub people the wrong way. I understand that.
I think people who watch your stream, they'll see folks like Olay or FD Signifier and others on your stream and kind of can see that there's something more nuanced happening here. I'll say as well, you know, I'm not here to defend theroot.com. I think they're in black ownership for the first time in a while. Shout out to Ashley Allison. I want to do something fun because we're kind of coming to a close here. And so I want to play a little bit of a game with you, Hassan. If your game, I'll tell you the game. I'm going to give you, it's a bit of a rapid fire, 2028 candidates, okay?
All right, let's do it.
I'm going to give you a name and you'll say yes or no. Like we'll go down the list, all right?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. First name, Rahm Emanuel.
No, but also it sucks because he said he would come on the show. He was like defending me. And not that I wanted to come on the show, but no.
This is what the section of the clip I watched. Now we have the context. You're going straight into it. There's no context. I watched, just to be clear, before anyone says this is taking out of context, I watched the 30 minutes prior to this point to make sure I was not missing any context. So we've done all the Marxist-based class analysis. We've already had him say that the Democrats have not won his vote yet. So let's go.
Oh, definitely no.
Gavin Newsom.
No.
JD Vance.
No, absolutely no. So wait, is this who I'm voting for in 2028? Like, what?
This is would you vote for it? Okay, let me tell you, based on what you know about them today, would you vote for these people in 2028?
Oh my God.
So he's framed it, just to be clear. He's framed it exactly like that. It's not, would you vote for them in a primary? Do you support them in general? Like, would you prefer them? He's saying 2028, it's the general. That's what he's saying. So, and now he knows this for the next few people he's asked about. So,
JD Vance, no, I will never vote for a Republican ever.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Maybe. Now we're getting into more comfortable waters. She's too anti-Medicare for all. You know, I think she's like
so maybe
linked to the private healthcare industry, but just so better than others. Definitely more responsive as a governor. But, you know, I'm 50-50.
All right. AOC.
Yes.
Tucker Carlson.
No.
Cory Booker.
No.
Okay, so that, like, in context, if Cory Booker, who is like moderate to like slightly left in the Democratic Party, like the constituency, no, like an absolute no, he wouldn't vote for him. Just to keep that in mind.
Absolutely not.
John Ossoff.
Again, interesting candidate, maybe.
Kamala Harris.
So Ossoff, who is as close as you could probably get to a candidate who could realistically win in the general, who is aligned enough on like core issues with something Hassan, and he's still maybe. And this is on a program where he's speaking to primarily liberals. Like he's still a mask on for this, and that's what he's saying.
Oh, God. No.
So Kamala Harris, just to be clear, furthest left candidate that was in a general in Hassan's lifetime, if not longer. So that's an absolute no in 2028 if there was in a general.
Pete Buttigieg.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess while we're here, actually, we're talking about candidates. You know, you live in California.
So I mean,
who are you?
There's no following. Like there's an actual belief. Like this is how privileged the system is to people like this. People who are just rich enough where nothing realistically affects them. Like the United States has been so significantly undermined by the Trump administration that there is just going to be probably decades and decades, if not permanent damage, that will affect working class Americans in a real way that their pocketbook feels. And because like your coalition is not strong enough to dominate in the Democratic Party because you can't speak to people who are actually voters, especially in important states, this is the vibe, is that we won't vote for them. You know, we'll just concede to the Republicans. We'll let them win.
Thinking about for the governor there. I mean, we have a few folks. It's been a bit of an upheaval lately. I mean, we could play the same game. I could give you a couple of names. You can tell me yes, no, and maybe give a little bit of an explanation. So let's start. Katie Porter.
No. Katie Porter was a very interesting candidate. Obviously, like she was able to take over a purple district and was making a name for herself. She had the whiteboard. She would cook all of these like executives. And then even before we found out about like her anger issues, the thing that I care about the most on top of that, because that tells me what your character is, but what I also care about on top of that is like what your attitude is about like what forces you're going to represent, who you're going to.
By the way, anger issues. This is a guy who is screaming at one guyers all day using slurs. Like that tells me a lot about your character, dude. Like, come on. What a virtue signal.
Her rapid change from being someone who was like somewhat pro worker, pro responsive politics, potentially a Bernie-crat, right, has shifted. She became anti-worker, and I find that to be
when you say rapid change, this is what happens when you win in purple districts. You have to actually listen to your electorate when you're in power. You have to represent everyone, the consensus, not just your pet projects.
Dangerous type of politics. So definitely knowing Katie Porter.
What about the people's billionaire Tom Steyer?
So I talked to Tom Steyer. I interviewed him, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think he's the most interesting candidate with viability right now in this race. Even before Swalwell's sexual assault allegations came up, and he had to quit the race and also resign from office. Those were like the top three candidates, right? You had Swalwell, you had Porter, and you had Steyer on like the Democrat camp, and then you have Bianco and Hilton, right? The two Republicans. And I was genuinely terrified. I was talking to some other folks that also live in California. We were trying to figure out like what are we going to do here, right? This is such a ridiculous situation we're in, where we can have, because California has the top two primary systems, jungle primary, so we could have a potential general race where the top two candidates were both going to be Republican. Now, obviously, Trump fixed that for us, so shouts out to him. He endorsed one over the other, and then that causes a lot of the Republicans to lean into one, and then also the Swalwell stuff came out. But yeah, I think Steyer, I can't believe I'm saying this, is probably a little bit more responsive than the rest of the candidates are. And I mean, there's another guy in California that I'm backing as well, named Shoykat Chakrabarty, and he's a centimillionaire, right? He's been in this game for a very long time. He's a co-founder of the Justice Democrats, AOC's first chief of staff, right? So he has really, really solid politics. They have a think tank. They write like incredible policy papers. But what I have realized, or at least maybe this is cope, is that all of those guys that we're voting for on the Democratic Party side, the establishment Democrats, they represent the interests of billionaires and millionaires regardless, even if they themselves are not billionaires or millionaires. So in the case of Tom Steyer, if he's advocating for, single payer healthcare in the state.
The fact that you say they're representing the billionaires or whatever, like maybe the question might be, one, what can you even expropriate from the billionaires? Like if you expropriated all of the billionaires' wealth, you're not covering most of these state deficits even close, let alone the federal deficits. Like the reality is American capitalism in the current state, that is just not where wealth consolidation is. It's in the general market. It's in assets held by like teachers unions, by normal 401ks. Like that's the realistic problem, is that like these people are they're oftentimes of not looking out for billionaires because they represent immense business opportunity for the states that they're in, right? When they leave with their taxes. And if they move their headquarters, their bases, their companies, then jobs move with them and jobs are lost with them. So like, it's not about just curtailing to them, but you have to actually like, if you're going to do class-based analysis, you have to also acknowledge the electoral realities. Like you can't just go and raid the coffers of billionaires for paltry amounts of income, right? These are not the amount of money you're getting from this is not going to be substantial to, close much, if any, of these tax deficits or fund the kind of programs you want. You're talking about a much more extensive tax protocol that would more be affecting the people the billionaires employ through their companies, not necessarily even them,
of California, that's a very appealing policy for someone like myself. I care about the policies and not the background of the person. So yeah, I think Tom Steyer could be a very interesting governor for the state.
Okay, last one, Xavier Becerra.
So I'm not super familiar with him, because if you haven't reached like a certain level of viability, because there's Ramsey Robinson as well, who's supposed to be like the California PSL candidate. There's Butch Ware, the Green Party candidate as well. And these guys are unfortunately having a very hard time making it out that 1%. A lot of people get mad at me for not like highlighting certain candidates, and I'm like, I don't have a magic wand, right? Like I can't make it happen. People are like, well, what about Zoran? Like you interviewed Zoran when he was at 1%, and it's like, well, I didn't do that on my own. Like maybe Third Way thinks that and they're terrified, right? But that's not the case. Like Zoran he's a generational politician. He's very charismatic, but more importantly than that, he had the backing of the DSA New York Machine, Working Families Party, in a city that is that has worked tirelessly to create this door knocking operation. A city that was much more open minded to Zoran's worldview. It's entirely different than
all that being said, Zoran underperformed more than almost any Democratic candidate in 2025. And it was in a race where the current mayor did not back out until late in the election, and he was running against the most disgraced politician alive in New York City, who cleaned up, by the way, with minority groups, who cleaned up with the working class. So, yeah, man, whatever.
governor's race, I didn't do that for Zoran. I couldn't do that for any candidate, really, and it's not up to me at all. So I try to make these pragmatic choices. So it's a long way of answering your question that I don't know enough about Xavier.
Okay, last one. You've been consistently critical of Democrats. What will it take for Democrats to win over Hassan Piker?
Oof, so much. I think they have to earn the trust of not only people like myself, but just of the American people. They have to become a party that truly represents the interests of the masses, truly represents the interests of the working class. They have to have 1,000 Zorans and Graham Plattners and people that work in their own specific districts in their own states that are still almost single-mindedly and very stubbornly fighting to express the desires of the masses, fighting to improve their lives materially, and communicating that to as many people as possible to ensure that no Republican ever wins another election ever again.
Hassan Piker, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the clip that made me want to watch this, not a context. It's just like it's so functionally crazy that you could have a guy who dubiously represents a very small fraction of the Democratic Party, likely almost only found in safe states that are always going to have Democratic candidates, and somehow he is getting courted positively by Democrats, and he's openly saying, yeah, the further left, some of the farthest left candidates that are available for a presidential general, not primary, I won't vote for them. I mean, it's Democrats deserve what they get at this point, because if you can't even understand who is and isn't an ally, like you don't have to have ideological parity, you don't have to have an agreement on everything, but the inability to even discuss or to know who is on your team fundamentally, it's crazy. So absurd, not out of context clipping, not out of context. I watched the whole thing, not out of context. All right, guys, whoever's in the chat, I'm going to take a quick break. Gotta take a walk and do some YouTube stuff, but